Okay, thank you everyone for joining us today. I know there's lots of great sessions, so really appreciate you giving us your time as well. You're here today to dig into Tree Equity Score. And I'll give a little bit of quick overview of the agenda, the rundown. I'm gonna do as brief as I can background on what Tree Equity Score is, how we do it, and where we do it. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague here. Oh, by the way, my name's Chris David. I'm the hi everybody. I lead GIS and data science for American Forest, and I'm here with my colleague Mushtaaq who's our analysis guru at American Forest. She's going to do a demo of the score. Then we're going to turn it over to some folks from the field to talk a little bit about how they're using Tree Equity Score in the field, the ways they see they could use it in the future as well, so really excited about that. Then we're going to force you to get your phones out, if you didn't already have them, or your laptops or your tablets, and we're going to do a little bit of an interactive exercise with Tree Equity Score, so you can get your hands dirty a little bit. And hopefully we'll have 20-25 minutes for questions and discussion at the end. So I'll start with American Forest, for those of you that don't know us. We are the oldest national conservation nonprofit in the country. We've been around since 1875. That means, if you're doing the math in your head, we're about a year and a half or a year and 3 months from our 150th anniversary, which we're really excited to celebrate. But we envision a world in which significant environmental, societal, and economic benefits of forests are fully realized and equitably available to all people. And we do this in three ways: through forestry innovation, through deep place-based partnerships to restore and plant forest, and to build movements. And Tree Equity Score is a part of all three of those. I'm excited to dig into it with you. So I want to start with three basic facts that underpin Tree Equity Score. And I think this is a lot of stuff that you all already know, so I'll try to move fast. But this really is important for the why of Tree Equity Score. So number one, trees are our first and most prevalent connection to nature. And especially in cities, and whether that's walking to the bus, to work, hanging out in your backyard or in city parks, they're the first things we see often. Trees are not equitably distributed in cities, and data bears that out. And our data shows that in cities, the poorest communities have 30%, up to 30% less tree canopy cover, and communities of color have up to 40% less tree canopy cover. And third, that climate change is here. It's already here. It's projected to continue to cause global havoc, and there are increased average temperatures of up to 4 degrees Celsius, maybe even up to 8 degrees Fahrenheit in the US. And you combine that with the urban heat island effect, and the impact can be drastic, will be drastic, life and death even. And you may have seen the study from Duke University that projects potentially 9-fold increase in heat-related deaths by 2100. So the time to act is now. And trees are on the front lines, providing offense and defense in the face of climate change. So reducing temperatures and sequestering carbon, filtering multiple air pollutants, even reducing energy cost. I think we all know those benefits of value, but they also, will mitigate the exacerbating impacts on existing conditions like asthma or heart disease. And more research is available indicating the measurable mental health benefits of trees in nature. So that leads us to what tree inequity is. Less trees means higher temperatures. We've been hearing about that the last couple days. We all already knew that. But often the burden of that disparity falls on low-income communities and communities of color and other community populations that are at greater risk, seniors, children, people with existing health conditions. And that's the nutshell of why. Tree Equity Score offers a course of action to advance tree equity in urbanized communities nationwide to make cities more inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. It's more than a map. Setting a national standard, building a movement, and supporting users that want to catalyze local action in any city across the country. And the impact has been, I think, historic. Tree Equity Score is a tool for this moment in time for sure. I don't think we can take credit for the $1.5 billion into tree equity through the Inflation Reduction Act, but I think we had a really important role in sort of increasing awareness around that. And we're going to continue to have a role in helping to drive that investment into the communities that need it the most. But through Tree Equity Score, we're also seeing increased awareness from corporate donors and foundations, and that means more money for trees in cities, especially in the communities that need it the most. And cities and states are taking action as well, taking charge and formally implementing tree equity into local policy, and we'll probably hear a little bit about that later on. But the thing that I think I'm most excited about with Tree Equity Score and most proud of is that it brings power to the people through democratized data. That's not just making it available. If it's available and not usable, we haven't gotten anywhere. What Tree Equity Score does is it makes it accessible and usable. And that's, I think, the most important part of Tree Equity Score. It puts the power into the people's hands to anyone that's interested in tree equity and in increasing and catalyzing investment for trees in their community. So it's a tool to support the work many of you are already doing, but also others that want to do this work but don't have the resources. It's a baseline for understanding and engaging with communities. It's a tool to inspire and educate, advocate for investment, implement new policy. And we've done it just about everywhere in the US. So every urban area in the country, that's over 190,000 urban neighborhoods, and over 12,000 cities and towns. And the premise is pretty simple. So we start with a score, 0 to 100. The lower your score, the higher the priority is for tree planting. Once you've reached a score of 100, you've achieved your tree planting target. So I'm going to dig into math. I have a math degree. That's my first passion. But the formula is pretty simple. I think that's important for us. Tree Equity Score is a combination of a measure of need and a measure of priority. So that measure of need is the difference between the existing canopy, what's on the ground now, and individualized neighborhood goal that I'll talk a little bit about now. So that goal is based on baseline tree canopy targets for forest, Mediterranean, grassland, and desert biomes. Mediterranean is new with the most recent release. It's focused mostly in coastal California, as we realize that the biome there is a little bit different than forested or desert, and we base that on USGS ecoregions. But the numbers that we use as those baselines do come from the Forest Service, and in particular the research of Dave Nowak. So once we have those baseline targets, identifying where those cities are, we adjust those targets, because while we want this, your targets and your goals neighborhood by neighborhood to be aspirational, we also need them to be achievable. Midtown Manhattan does not have the same carrying capacity for trees as Decatur, Georgia, for example. So we use building density to make that adjustment, and we use Microsoft's building density or building footprint data for that. I'm going to linger on existing canopy for a second because it's really important. It would be impossible to build Tree Equity Score without the data that we have. We use Google's data from the Environmental Insights Explorer. It's an AI-based model that is really, truly incredible, incredibly accurate, down to less than a meter. They aggregate that for us at the neighborhood scale and deliver that, so we can estimate what the percent canopy cover is in each neighborhood across the country. And to be honest, like, this is something we are at a moment in time for data and AI. We intend to continue to take advantage of these new advancements whenever we can. And I think there's going to be more and more. It seems like they're making advancements in AI every week. And then we combine this measure of need with a measure of priority. Our priority index is 7 equally weighted indicators, 5 of them coming from the census: income, employment, race, language, which is linguistic isolation, and age, which is focused on seniors and children. We have a mini health index that comes from CDC's places index. We pull out mental health, physical health, asthma, and heart disease. And then finally, we use Landsat's satellite imagery to calculate surface temperature and measure heat severity and heat disparity in cities. We roll all those up into a priority index. That combination of need and priority is how we get tree equity score. So we have 2 ways to engage with the score. The National Explorer, which Mushtaaq will spend most of her time demoing, which is our flagship, as every urban neighborhood in the country. It gets down to the neighborhood level using national data and estimating the benefits of achieving tree equity using iTree. We take the iTree methodology and incorporate that into our tools and make it very simple to see those benefits. Mushtaaq will show that in the demo. It's pretty exciting. We have the ability to create reports for cities or municipalities, counties, congressional districts, and states. And then we have our local deep dive tools. We call them the Tree Equity Score Analyzer. Sometimes we call them TESA. Sometimes we call them the local analyzers. But these go a step further. So you can look at individual properties and right-of-way to identify where it is possible to plant trees within your city. We do this either within the city boundary, a regional boundary, or more and more, and sometimes a state boundary. We do this with local stakeholders to build those tools. And we have the ability to create your own scenarios, identify the neighborhoods that are most important to you, and select and identify the number of trees that you'll be able to plant place to place within those neighborhoods. So Mushtaaq's going to give a little bit of a teaser of that tool when she does the demo. But the important thing is those are, fundraised for individually and require local stakeholders and co-leads. This is truly a co-created tool with local partners. So we're doing a lot. This will be my last slide before I turn it over to Mushtaaq. But the important thing here is that we're committed to Tree Equity Score for the long haul. So this isn't a flash in the pan. This isn't something that's going to go away next year. We're committed to it, both in updating the data, but also to improving upon it. And we hope to hear some opportunities for improvement from you all today. We're going to be regularly reviewing new technologies and new advancements in data and incorporating those as well. Like I said, feedback from users, that's the most critical part to us. If it doesn't work for you, it probably doesn't work. And then also, we're going to continue to be able to try to make that connection to the experiences people are having on the ground with the data. So making that link to what we're seeing in the data to what people are experiencing and really start to tell those stories. As you can see, we have a lot of analyzers on the list. I'll just highlight, by the end of the year, we'll have about 10 that are live, and we'll have, we still have several more in development. One thing I'll note is we are expanding over the northern border of the US into Canada. We're going to be working with Toronto on a TESA, and hopefully do some more work in Canada as well. And maybe the most exciting thing to me on this is we're expanding to the United Kingdom. So the equivalent of our Tree Equity Score National Explorer is going to be delivered for all 4 countries in the United Kingdom. That's being delivered on December 5th. We're doing that in partnerships with 2 great nonprofits in the UK, the Woodland Trust and the Center for Sustainable Healthcare. And really excited about that launch, where there's going to be a tree planting associated with it on December 5th in Belfast, and hopefully some presentations in COP about it as well. Okay. Mushtaaq, I'm going to turn it over to you for a demo. Let's see if we can make this as seamless as possible. There you go.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah. All right, so today I'm going to just demonstrate the 2 tools that use this Tree Equity Score, our National Explorer and our Analyzer. So right now I'm on the home page of the Tree Equity Score site. It's treeequityscore.org. If you happen to have our stickers, you can just scan the QR code. But on this homepage, you can see the banner here that says the next generation of Tree Equity Scores here. So we had a major data update in August. So if you're curious about why your Tree Equity Scores changed in your neighborhood, that data story gives a good explanation as to the variety of changes we made for the tool. And all of those changes came directly from user feedback over the last couple of years. So we're definitely excited to hear any more feedback, because we're constantly trying to improve the tool. Okay. So once you click this button here, you go and find your Tree Equity Score, and you can search for a location. As you can see here, all the areas in green are places that we have Tree Equity Score. So we expanded from what currently used to be urbanized areas to all U.S. urban areas in Alaska and Hawaii. So that's quite a few places. That's 80% of the U.S. population. You can find your score by searching a location or an address. I'm going to search, what I searched for today was the Apple store that's across the street. Let's see if I can find it. There it is, on K Street. And you'll see like a pin drop down, and that's the location. You can see here, all of these are localities, which are like cities, towns, and villages that have Tree Equity Scores. So we're looking currently in Washington, D.C., which has a composite score of 88. I'm going to zoom in to where the pin is dropped here. And that's this block group right here. So this is kind of across the street to where we are. And this is the neighborhood. So when we say neighborhoods, we're talking about U.S. Census block groups. You can see that there are unique GeoIDs up there. You can see a population of the amount of people that are that live in this block group or this neighborhood, and this comes from the census. And then you can see the score of the neighborhood. So the score of the neighborhood we're currently in is 89. You can see the rank of the block groups in Greater DC, so you can kind of see where it is. And we added a new feature. So our priority index is from 0 to 1, where the higher the index, the lower the score, to indicate a higher prioritization. Just to make things even easier for people to use, we've kind of separated this out so you can quickly and easily see like what the priority is. So for example, this neighborhood is moderate priority. If you look at the tooltip here, you can kind of see more information on how that is designated as well. Just continuing on in the sidebar, we have the current canopy cover. So that's 6% in the area and the goal of 20%. And you can see here kind of what Chris was talking about by adjusting. So this is a neighborhood with like tons of buildings. So we definitely adjusted the target baseline from 40% to 20% as well. Under that, we can see the score indicators or the priority index. So this is all of the components of the priority index, and you can see them and the values that come about it. So this is a block group, for example, has 48% people of color, 5% children and seniors, 1% of households are linguistically isolated, etc. In using the score, we have these 2 tabs here, the layers and the filters tab. I like to think of the layers tab as like a good way of just exploring the data that you have. So for example, you can see here, the layers kind of take what the components of Tree Equity Score is, and then each layer can be individually accessed in the tool. So if we just go down, there's tree canopy cover. And you can see here that's 6%. You can see the gap, and you can see the priority index, and then all the components of the score. And this makes it a lot easier to sort of explore the patterns in the area. If we zoom out, back out to Washington, you can really see how, for example, tree canopy cover looks in comparison to the people of poverty or the people of color. And you can see how heat disparity and canopy cover really interact. So that's the benefits of the Layers tab if you're using it. Trackpads are so annoying. Okay. Filters, on the other hand, I like to think of as to sort of narrow your focus. I think the benefit of Tree Equity Score is, like, again, it's democratizing data. You get lots of data in the same place that you probably would have to access through a variety of different things, but it's also a lot of data. So the Filters tab kind of helps you narrow in on what you want to focus on. So for example, if I'm only interested in scores below 70, you can kind of just do that there, and that, I'm going to go back to my Tree Equity Score so you can see that a little bit more clearly. You can see all the neighborhoods with a score below 70. As you can see, we've kind of significantly reduced the amount of block groups that are highlighted, and it's easier for you to kind of narrow down and like focus on what you're interested in. All right. As well, the other thing that Chris mentioned was the dynamic reports that we have. So you can see here, once you click on a neighborhood, you can see all the reports that are available for the area. You have the locality, which is DC. Well, DC is a very interesting example because you quite can't see like the differences, but you basically get a locality, a county, a congressional district, and a state report. You can also use the reports tab to kind of search for a location. So if I search for like Boston, for example, there's a variety of Bostons in the United States, and you can kind of see which one you want. So you can access it through this tab, and you also can access it by selecting a neighborhood. If I select the locality report, I can see Washington, D.C. You can see the score, as I mentioned before, 88, and a summary of the information in the tool itself. So that's a summary of the demographic information, the distribution of the scores, as well as some charts to help you kind of see some patterns, again, exploring the data as well. So I just created a report with tree canopy and heat disparity, for example. And then this is the part that Chris mentioned about iTree, about getting all block groups to a score of 75. You can actually quantify the ecosystem service benefits of the trees that you would plant. So in order to get those 41 block groups up to a score of 75, that requires 20,000 trees. And planting those 20,000 trees would have the following benefits. There's carbon, water, and air benefits. And you can see a map of the district here as well. These reports, you can export them as a PDF, or you can share them as a URL, which makes it easily accessible for people to see. That's going to be my demo of the National Explorer. Really quickly, we have the Tree Equity Score analyzers. Honestly, this could be a demo in and of itself, so I'm just going to highlight again just the differences. So I'm going to show the Carnegie Hall again. Oh, am I still in the, I was in this one, okay. There we go, K Street. So when we say deep dive, we mean it. This is the parcel level.
Oh, there we go.
It wouldn't be a demonstration if there wasn't a single error. Okay, here's the parcel. This is the actual Apple library that you see across the street. So we have property level information as well as right of way. And we also have deep dive in the sense of like the type of data. It's not only tree canopy data, it's also land cover data. So if I select this parcel, you can see we have not only just the tree canopy, but the potential tree canopy, as well as the amount of unsuitable surface. So you can kind of see this if you do go across the street, there's no planting space available in the area, but there is in the right of way and the pavement. So that's another element of it. We also have additional data sets here. You can see we have a filter to see whether a parcel is a school or a park, what watershed it's in, and its flood risk. All of these data sets came at the suggestion of the people we were working with in the DC metro area. Additionally, the thing that sort of makes this tool different is you can create scenarios where you plant trees. So this is a scenario that I made. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but you can kind of see here that you basically can plant in parcels and in right-of-way. For example, I planted in this parcel 15 trees. Just going to update the planting here. And you can also rename them. So I've renamed the parcels and block groups that I've been looking at to sort of highlight the areas that I've been working in. And then you can generate, zoom out a little bit. That's Anacostia High School. Planting here. And then you can generate reports that are very detailed as well. So these analyzers are only available for specific locations, and they summarize all of the information of our tool. Again, these are shareable. You can send this URL to people. You can mark places where you've planted. People have created reports about the trees that they planted in Boston, for example. And I just want to highlight a really cool tab in the analyzers that we have, which is basically the benefits of the existing site canopy of the places I selected. So the trees that already exist there, because they are all providing ecosystem service benefits as well. That is a very, very brief overview of the analyzer, and I'll hand it back over to Chris. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Mushtaaq. Okay, now we'll have some fun. So as I mentioned, we're gonna have some stories from the field. I'm super excited to have these 4 folks here. We'll have Laura Martins, who's the Urban Tree Program Coordinator for the Office of Heat Response and Mitigation at the City of Phoenix. Lawrence Sobson, the Urban and Community Forester for the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. Mona Cummings, the Executive Director of Tree Fresno, and Josh Reed, the Education Coordinator for Speak for the Trees out of Boston. So we'll start with Laura. I'll turn it over to you.
Great, I am shorter, so I will put this down. Hi, everyone. As Chris said, I'm the Urban Tree Program Manager for the City of Phoenix. I'm a landscape architect. I'm about 1.5 years into this role. I did not come from government, so this has been a big learning curve for me, this new role, and even actually working in urban forestry as like a single discipline. So this conference has been really, really great for me. I would be remiss if I didn't give you a slight background into Phoenix, into what we're working with. We're the 5th largest city in the country by population. We're about 1.6 million people in the city, about 3 to 4 million in the regional area. This summer, we had the hottest summer ever measured. We had 55 days over 110 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 43 degrees Celsius. We blew every record out of the water. We had every day from June 30th to July 30th was over at least 110 or above. We set new records for temperatures never dropping below 85 degrees at night, 90 degrees at night, 95 degrees at night. We had 5 nights where the temperatures never went below 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Our governor declared the first ever heat emergency for our state. Unfortunately, it was kind of at the end of the summer, so it only mobilizes some financial support, but it was kind of towards the end when things were cooling down. Every summer, unfortunately, we have hundreds of people who die from the heat. Mostly it's our unhoused neighbors, but also sheltered folks who don't have AC or don't turn it on because of the cost. And so lots of these deaths are not necessarily can be prevented by tree planting. It's a lot of people who don't turn their, but we need better housing practices in Arizona. But we have a lot of heat illnesses, quality of life issues that we can directly benefit people by planting a lot of trees. Where in our city, especially, and in the more trees that we plant, we will cool down the city, and especially some of those nighttime temperatures. I think we can get down with some pretty aggressive tree planting. Because in Phoenix, it feels the way you feel the heat is about 20 to 30 degrees different in the shade of tree than in like the full sun. And when it's 110 degrees and you're living outside, that's a pretty big difference, even if you're just walking outside. Going to lunch, it's a huge difference. So I just wanted to give that a little background. Our Office of Heat Response and Mitigation is the first office for heat in the country, in a city, in a municipality. My position, an urban tree position, and my colleague who's here with me position, a tree equity program project manager position, are the first forestry positions in an Office of Heat that we think in the country, in the world. So we're like having conversations like every single day that people have never had before, like trees plus heat. I mean, we talk a lot of stuff we've been talking about at this conference, but we actually have it as our jobs, and we have metrics we have to hit, or we have goals that we have to set. And so one of the main things that we're doing right now, so American Forest has been like an amazing partner with us. As Jad mentioned this morning, our mayor set a partnership goal with, our mayor signed a partnership with American Forest, and then in that partnership set a goal of raising all of our neighbors up to the average tree equity score by 2030. And frankly, we think that's kind of a low goal. I mean, just the average, when the average in Phoenix, like, frankly, isn't that great. I mean, we can be doing a lot better. But we are updating our 13-year-old tree and shade master plan this fall, planning on giving it to council in April. And we are using 3 themes for every goal that we set in that plan. It has to go through kind of the filter of heat, water, and equity for every tree goal that we're setting. So the tree equity maps, or we just call it the tree equity maps, so the tool has been really, really helpful to explain this rather complex story about equity very, very simply and very graphically. As a communication tool, it's just been fantastic. You can show that map. It's super easy to use. Communities members have been using it. I can show it to like a council member, and their staff can use it within minutes and understand what I'm talking about. At a high level, it's been really, really wonderful to really, I don't think we'd be where we are as a department and get the funding that we got in IRA, and also our council allocated ARPA money, $4 million of ARPA money for tree planting in Phoenix. I don't think we would not be there without the tree equity tool, also with our partnership with American Forest. But just because it's like, it just shows so easily what's going on equity-wise in our city. I'll say that Chris said I could say a couple of challenges. Most of which I think are going to be fixed when we get to the TESA map. But we have been a little bit challenged in that the tree equity map has been a little less precise at the site level. I mean, most of the data that gets plugged into it is census block. So it's at a census tract level, and when you kind of get really down into it, like looking at a school or looking at really specific decisions, it's not as precise. And I would really, really encourage everyone to ground truth every decision that you make based on equity, or just any tree decision, money spending decision you make in your community at that level, just like in the field with stakeholders, because it's just going to make your decision-making process better. For example, we heard an example of someone not funding a school, like a school applied for a grant with our utility, and they weren't funded because they had like a tree equity score, like 1 below the average or at the average. And like I said, our average is not good. So to like deny funding to a school because they're 1 point off of the average or not, like, to me, that's just like not how this tool should be used. And we kind of like, so it's like sort of a challenge to like describe that, because it gets into the nitty gritty of the data and like this scale of this data and this, but Chris has actually been really, like, I ask him really specific questions about that all the time, and he helps me like tell people what to say. So that's been really great for us. But yeah, so we've been partnering with American Forest on the TESA, which was just shown to you, the parcel level tool, and that's been they've been really open to feedback about what specific metrics are going to go in that tool and what we're going to use. Like, for example, I mean, we have a lot of partnerships with ASU. Arizona State University is one of the most prominent heat research universities in the country, and we have researchers that are modeling mean radiant temperature data for our entire city. So it's not the surface data, not the temperature of like the streets you're walking on, but the way that you feel the temperature in the air. And they're somewhat closely related, but heat people are like, you got to use mean radiant temperature. That's like a better accurate way of feeling heat. And so they've been really open to they're actually working with one of the professors who did that model to actually incorporate the mean radiant temperature data into the TESA score, which we're like, did not think they could do for us. So it was really great that we're like all trying to work on this together, and we're actually helping them like there's some UCLA professors who are doing this for other cities. So we might be able to incorporate this in other cities too. Yeah, I don't know. That's basically all I mean I can say. We use the score all the time. Actually, the score that you guys did this update in April, and the previous version was a lot. We didn't have as many metrics we could. It wasn't as flexible and nuanced, because actually I think the nuances even tell like a better story about the tree equity picture in our city. And before it was like a number, and then you could like tweak a few little things. But now, Kayla and I were even saying like, oh my gosh, we didn't even know some of that stuff you could do. We've been playing with the layers, but some of the back end reports we hadn't seen before. So like we need to spend some time on our computers. So I'm happy to answer any questions about how our city is working with the tree equity score map and with American Forest. So. I'm here all week. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Laura. That was great. We have Lawrence next. There he is. All right.
Can I mess around with this? Can I like pull it up?
The score?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool. There's no room on here. This is.
It's on my phone now.
Yeah. Jeez. How's it going, everyone? Sorry, I ate a spicy chicken sandwich, so it's like stuck in there, you know. But yeah, no. This thing doinks. Tree equity score is really good. Oh, I'm Lawrence. I'm with the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, and there's two of us. You probably know Kevin Sayers. He's been there for 20 plus years. He's great. He's a fantastic guy. He's at his anniversary, so they sent me instead. Yeah, so talking about tree equity score here, I have nothing but good things to say about what American Forest has been helping us with in Michigan. So what I do is I assist communities with their urban forestry and whatnot, and nonprofits. And there's a bunch of people here, Eric Candela, Jessica Hutchinson, Jenny Shockling, who have done amazing things. If you heard of the Detroit Tree Equity Partnership, and that's essentially just planting tons of trees in Detroit to help tree equity. And this tree equity score is a fantastic tool because it has a lot of different things going for it. As we saw in the demonstration, you could find so much in the reports. But you could see here, here's Southeast Michigan, here's Detroit, and definitely a lot of areas in the lower tree equity score and whatnot, and definitely we got a lot of work to do. And sorry, it's the spice. It's so, it had Carolina Reaper stuff on it. It's killing me right now. This tool is great. In Michigan, we have our own. It's called the Michigan Environmental Justice Screening Tool. And this tool is not, you could see here, I'll pull it up. It is not nearly as good. There's not a lot of layers. Not to poo-poo whoever made this with Michigan, but as you can see as it loads here, oh my god, this is like a nightmare. As it loads here, you can see like this is the interface already. It's just a mess, and when you go in, you're not getting all the data that Tree Equity Score provides. Like it just has a general gradient for communities and whatnot. So we're not getting all the data of the canopy cover or anything or that Tree Equity Score provides. And we'll definitely being able to work with communities, like let's take East Point here. I love East Point, they're fantastic. And being able to be like, hey, let's see what you got. You got a locality score of 82. Definitely the distribution by the blocks. You have one that's definitely in the 0 to 69, the 70 to 79, and then how we can get all of them up. They have to plant 455 trees. And just being able to talk to communities that don't have certified arborists on staff or don't have a lot of trained staff, and having it broken down like this, like their city council and whatnot start scratching themselves and they're like, oh, this is something we should start to like focus and start investing in. And the fact that it has iTree built in makes it a lot easier than me having to talk to them about iTree and then all this other stuff, and it just confuses them. So it really takes out a lot of the clutter. Having just all this information there is like paramount. It's been a lot of the people I've worked with are guys in Department of Public Works that have been there for 30 plus years, and they're like, well, we're doing what we're doing. We're going to plant a bunch of calorie repair, and you're not going to tell us what we are not going to do. So being able to go in and make, at the very least, some sort of economic benefit as well as the environmental and health benefits through this tool really starts to change the tune of things. And they're like, you know, that makes sense. Okay, we'll plant 455 trees, and then even they had to go. They love the slider. I gotta give it to you guys. Like move up to 80, and it's like, oh, almost 1,800 trees. Yeah, we could do that in a decade. So it's just fantastic. I love this tool. We use it a lot. For our grant program, we got our IRA funds, and we're giving it out this year through our community forestry grant, and we usually, well, because of that, we have to use the CJust tool, which CJust is also great. And then we tell people, hey, supplement it with that Michigan Environmental Justice screen and also tree equity score. It's fantastic, and be like, you could set your goals here, and it has all the information. The only thing, honestly, to improve this in my eyes, other than what's already being done, is put in an app. So we could do it through the phone, because when I try and show some people through the phone, I'm like, oh, my fingers are too big for this. So, but other than that, this is just a fantastic tool in the tool belt, and like being able to see the block groups and everything. There's countless meetings of communities that I've been like, okay, this is the exact area you gotta focus on, and let's go from there. And it's just been great. I don't know. I guess I don't have too much to say about it other than it just knocked out of the park. So if you have any questions, let me know. I mean, if you're not using this, highly suggest it. It's the Tessa, the analyst version for Detroit, is in beta right now, and that's been a very fun process going through, being like, what layers do you want? What do you want to see? And it's really like something that you have to stop and think about for the past, when was the last meeting? 2 weeks ago or something? So, yeah, so it's just like, yeah, you got to stop and think, like, what do I want? What is necessary in this? And that's going to be fantastic in the future. Detroit's a big city, and the city can't do everything alone, so there's a lot of nonprofits, a lot of community groups, and it's definitely the information they need to make a good project, essentially. It's like, yeah, we're going to go right here, this is why, this is what the benefits are going to be. It just brings everything together. It's putting the pieces, so that's all I got. So I see Ben yawning over there. So.
Thanks, Lawrence. That was great. One thing to know, I mean, Lawrence mentioned the CJust tool. That is, we are trying to work out the details of incorporating that data set into Tree Equity Score, because I know a lot of folks need to use CJust and want to use CJust, but also want to be able to see how it compares to Tree Equity Score. So we're working through some of the details to be able to do that as well. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Mona.
All right, thank you, Chris. I want to send a shout out to Laura, who actually prefaced my presentation a little bit about Central California which is very similar to the climate there in Phoenix, Arizona. So many of her statistics about a number of days over 100 resonate with me. We had in 2021 over 69 days, 100 degrees or over. So we deal with extreme heat. So my name is Mona Nyandero Cummings, and I am the CEO of a little urban tree planting nonprofit in Central California called Tree Fresno. Now, this organization was started nearly 40 years ago by a group of concerned citizens that thought that maybe the tree, a large shade tree, was probably at least part of the solution to many of our societal and environmental ills in Central California. We are located in the central San Joaquin Valley, and Tree Fresno serves 4 counties, Fresno, Madera, Kings, and Tulare counties. There are about 2 million people in that region of the world, and it's extremely hot. We have extreme temperatures, we have intense sunshine. We also have many problems with our air and water quality associated with many different industries that are active in the area, including we have many freeways that run through the Fresno area, highways, big diesel trucks. Many of the fulfillment centers for Amazon are located in the Central Valley of California. So we are a very large Fresno, the city of Fresno itself, about 600,000 people, and it is very diverse. It also deals with this sort of the disparities that you have in a classic scenario of the disparities between the North and the South. And that's what we see here in Fresno in regards to our concept or our principles of tree equity. So we've planted about 53,000 trees over the years, almost 40 years. And when I entered the organization about 4 years ago, I took over from my predecessor who had been there for about 8 years. He was retiring, had a long career, was in his early 80s. And one thing that I noticed just from my perception coming in and talking to people in the community was that our organization, Tree Fresno, was very well known in North Fresno. So for planting trees along the new trails that came in, all of the urban development for housing, you have this wonderful sort of spread of parks that are accessible to the communities in the sort of the up and coming areas of Fresno. But in South Fresno, where we have the greater tree inequity, we were virtually unheard of. And admittedly, I come from a background of my first real job when I graduated college with a biology degree was I joined the Peace Corps. So if anybody knows anything about that kind of philosophy, if you're raised in that grassroots development, I knew that we had to do something about that to be able to engage our community in the work that we were charged to do. Now, Tree Fresno is fortunate enough to live in a state that prioritizes the expansion of the tree canopy. And so since about 2016, we've been receiving funding through the CAL FIRE Urban and Community Forestry Program. Most of that funding comes through the California climate investments for the purpose of lowering greenhouse gases and addressing issues of climate change. So we have literally planted thousands of trees through that program, with the funding through that program. But again, reel back 4 years ago when I came in, we were charged with planting in the most what we would term disadvantaged communities per Cal EnviroScreen. So my predecessor here, he was saying that, so Lawrence was talking about Michigan's similar to EnviroScreen multiple layer approach to addressing and labeling, I'd say, distinguishing one community from another. This is the first tool that we have used, and we're actually our progress is gauged by how well we address these disadvantaged communities in terms of treeing them up. In fact, I'll say that I often use this term instead of using this terminology of disadvantaged, we call them undertreed communities. Because I think sometimes in our professions, especially when we're using tools, we have to be really careful about the language that we use. So first of all, Cal EnviroScreen allows us the opportunity to, especially like sort of analyze the pollution burden. So that's number one through those kinds of grants. What I was excited about, my very first activity that I did coming into Tree Fresno was attend the California Urban Forest Council annual conference on the coast. It was San Luis Obispo. And I saw Sarah Anderson Sewell give a presentation on tree equity. And I thought it was extremely powerful. Not only was she sharing with us this information about the inequities in terms of trees in the community, but also how that tied to also these other inequities that we have in terms of health conditions, health burden, and then also workforce, so jobs and the economy. So one thing that definitely resonates in Fresno, in that region, it is a more lower income region of the state of California. So we don't have the booming Silicon Valley. We're not as elevated in status, and we suffer greatly from a lack of jobs and also a lack of training programs that provide that. So that was the first thing that I latched on, and my organization decided that we were going to build the organization towards this concept, principles of tree equity, and to make friends. Remember, I'm a Peace Corps volunteer, so make friends with our community and engage them in the work that we do, so that the long-term prognosis for these trees that we plant will be good, and that we could actually create perhaps homegrown cheerleaders for our trees. So I started partnering with, and this is before the actual score came about, so you're seeing this tree equity principles within Tree Fresno that we paired with the tools that we were using with the state of California, and then going out and partnering with organizations that already had established relationships with the community. So my organization has 3 full-time people and a part-time person. We actually our work is actually extended by the use of obviously volunteers that come to us by the thousands, and then also for we contract with landscape contractors to do our larger projects, and just partner. We have about 24 cities we work in, about 30 school districts, and everything in between. So what we did is, instead of expanding our ranks at Tree Fresno, I went and partnered with organizations that already had those relationships established. For instance, we didn't have Spanish-speaking capacity, and in California you absolutely need that. So either we were going to build out that in our organization or partner with, and what we did is partnered with an organization called the Central California Environmental Justice Network. And so they are already working in many of our undertreed communities in Spanish, and interestingly enough, they address many issues. And one of them at the top is tree planting. So they came to us, we partnered with them. Recently, we were awarded through our air district a couple $1 million to work with them in South Central Fresno specifically, which is identified as one of the most polluted in the state. So they allow us the ability to be able to reach our residents in Spanish to start with. So about June 2021 is when the Tree Equity Score was released for Fresno and Hanford. There were several, probably about 6 or 7 cities within our footprint of Tree Fresno. And I was excited about that because what it did is it gave us another tool, and a little bit friendlier and more accessible tool to share with the community in driving our work, in allowing us to share the story of why we are planting where we are. As good as an EnviroScreen is, it's not really friendly to the average person. So it's you saw what he pulled up for Michigan. That's very similar to what we have in California. It's important information, but for someone who wants to get to understand where is it that Fresno sits within the scoring process, what does it look like, what layers exist there. This is where I see that the tree equity score, and then sort of like looping back to American forests. So that information is on their website, which supports the work that actually Tree Fresno does. So I'm kind of the philosophy that we don't independently own this important information. As you said, democratically accessible, just making sure that people are able to read from different sources of information. The tree equity score, how I've used it, is really through our grant writing process and communicating with the greater community on how they can learn more. The pictures from it, the score itself, the difference between North and South Fresno is like 50 points. So our overall score is 72, and the scoring, the disparity between North and South is just incredible. And that drives our partner organizations who are becoming well versed in the benefits of trees to want to partner with us. We can leverage funding from the state because we have been around for several decades and working with state funding since 2016. And I like that ability to be able to attract the funding and to partner with those organizations who can help, again, extend our work into the community. So I think that about covers it, and I'm excited about the updates to the score. I mentioned, just one last thing, that the Air District funding that came to us for South Central Fresno, this will allow us to kind of drill down in the community a little bit more and make an action plan, and that creates that informed decision making on how we plant. And that is different than what we were doing 10 years ago. So I'm very thankful to you for that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mona. Okay, last speaker. We have Josh Reed from Speak for the Trees. Where is he? Oh, there he is.
No. All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Chris, for the opportunity to speak here. So my name is Joshua Reed. I am the education coordinator at Speak for the Trees. We're based in Boston, and we are an urban forestry nonprofit. So my experience with this tool has been more with the Tree Equity Score Analyzer, more so than the Tree Equity Score. And it's been really beneficial to us. So last fall, I believe it was, American Forest reached out to us as they were developing this tool and introducing it to Boston. They reached out to us to introduce the tool to community members in Boston. So they trained us on how to use it, and then asked us to then train community groups on how to use the tool and how it can be beneficial to them in advocating for their own planting proposals. And so those trainings, we had reached out to 3 community advocacy groups, as well as an environmentally focused school in Boston, the Boston Green Academy. And the training was in 2 sessions. So we had taught them how to use the Tree Equity Score Analyzer, which was shown earlier, right? So just again, it adds to the Tree Equity Score in that you're able to prioritize communities, those under canopy communities, develop a planting proposal, and you can then receive a impact report that then shows those environmental and economic benefits, right? So it becomes this really great advocacy tool. And so we would train those advocacy groups on how to use it, and then in the second training, we help them establish goals from that training, right? Like, how can you now use this tool to then, create to actually bring to life your own planting plans. So use it in that way. We also, with our youth job program, the Teen Urban Tree Corps, we have used it to educate them on tree equity, as well as the disparities between communities in Boston, right, in tree coverage and the negative outcomes of that. So it's been really useful to us as an education tool in that way. And I, not just TESA, but the tree equity score map itself is also really beneficial. Just using that map, going into the different layers and looking at cities, not just based on the tree equity score, but you can also look at like the average surface temperature in those communities, right? And many other demographics, and it's really helpful as an education tool in that way. But for us, I think I see the most potential in TESA really as an advocacy tool, right? Because that, the being able to develop your own planting plan through it, and then getting this really well detailed, easy to read report that shows all of those benefits that you can then take and present to, the policymakers or whoever it may be, funders it may be, that you're, assisting you in those tree plantings. So yeah, I'm excited that we've been able to use this tool, and I'm excited that it's now being, brought to other cities. That's really great. Yeah, if I have one thing to add, I think it's really helpful that we get these impact reports on, from the tree plantings. I would also be interested in seeing, sort of in the reverse way, like if there was we've heard a lot about this we've heard from this from the community groups we work with, like if we could see a proposal of trees removed, right, could also be really great in advocating, against, say, like, building developments or something, right, where trees are being knocked down, so we could see it in that other way. I think would also be really cool. Yeah, I think that's all I have. Thank you all. Cool.
Thank you, Josh. Yeah, the sort of change over time, whether it's gain or loss, is something that people talk about a lot, and we really want to be able to support that, and we have some ideas. Okay. I don't know if we've ever really done this with a room this large before, but we want folks to test it out. We don't have a ton of time, so I might cut this a little bit short, but we're hoping people can get your phone, tablet, laptop out, and we're just gonna get you playing around in the tool. If you have large thumbs like Lawrence, you can scan the QR code if you have one of the stickers, but it is just treeequityscore.org on your phone. So we're just gonna ask you to get into the map, use the search bar to identify an address of your choosing, where you live, where you grew up, where you have an interest in a city, and then start exploring. Explore the components of the score in the neighborhood you search to. Open one of the dynamic reports, whether it's a city, county, congressional district, or state report. And then explore the data in the report. The slider that Lawrence mentioned is one of the things that is really, I think, one of the coolest things in the tool, and see what it might take to achieve full tree equity, or achieve tree equity, achieve a score of 80 or a score of 90 in every neighborhood in the city. So we'll just take a couple of minutes and do this, and I'm available if you have a question. Raise your hand. There's a bunch of other American Forest folks in the room that should be able to help you as well if there's any issues or if you have any questions. So we'll just take 5 minutes, and while that's happening, I will it looks a little bit different on the computer than it does on the phone, but I'll just be doing the same thing on the computer. Yes. Not the National Explorer for the U.S. So, sorry. So we will, hopefully by April, have a TESA for Toronto. So that's the deep dive tool. And we're hoping that that leads to more for Canada and potentially all right, let's talk. Yeah, absolutely. So you're saying, is there a London? Yeah, so December 5th is our launch event for the UK. So we'll have every urban area in all of the UK, so all 4 countries. And it'll look very similar to what we have for the National Explorer here.
Is there a way to exclude a census block from the dynamic report? We've got one.
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's funny. In the last version of True Equity Score, we excluded block groups that don't have any people, and I have to say I take the credit for this one. I added it back because I wanted to be people to be able to see what the tree percentage was. We can't right now, but there might be a way to sort of remove it from the calculation of the score, even though you could see the map. But thank you, and I'd love to see which one you're talking about, and maybe you can talk after. Huh?
You have the flag on there that's red and 0.
Yeah, it does identify that it doesn't have any people. If you may have seen that in the left-hand side, but you already knew that as well. Yeah. So that's a good. So, do you mind sharing what city? East Palo Alto. Okay. It shows 20%. Okay. So that is one thing. I mean, I do feel very confident in the Google data, but it's not going to be perfect, right? However, so one of the things that we do, so when we build a TESA, I don't know if Mushtaaq mentioned this, but we need higher resolution data than what we can get from Google, or more detailed data. We need to know where the buildings are, where the roads are, like a more detailed land cover data set. When we have that, once we run that process, we usually work with the University of Vermont Spatial Analysis Lab, Jarlath O'Neill Dunn, who I'm sure many of you know. But we would incorporate land cover data that's local into a test from a TESA into the national tool. So there are a couple of places where we're not using the data from Google, we're using the local data. This is a long-winded way of saying, if you have the data, we can ingest that back into our tool. Yeah. But there's always going to be something that's a little bit different. When you do that LiDAR-based analysis, generally what we've seen is they're within a percentage or two of each other. Sometimes there might be something else going on there, but I'd also like to explore what that is. And we could share that with our partners to improve their data set too. So.
Part of the analysis you talked about where you have a number of trees that are possible to plant. Are you assuming that pavement is permanent, or are you only assuming that building is permanent?
So when we estimate possible planting opportunities, so there's two things. In the National Explorer, we make an assumption that you can get to whatever the target is that we've set. So if it's 40% or 30% or 20%, that assumption I think is fairly conservative based on the building data that we have in the tree canopy cover. When Mushtaaq was showing like what's possible to actually plant, we use a general definition of what's plantable. So the plantable space is where there's grass shrub, where there's bare earth, and where there's non-road, non-building impervious cover.
So you're reducing the goal based on pavement, and you're also only looking at non-pavement.
Yes. Yeah. Although, we do make sidewalk areas for street trees. Those are open to planting, and obviously we're not going to turn every Walmart parking lot into a forest, but those are plantable. But those are all plantable. Yeah.
How frequently is it updated? For example, if I'm a municipal forester and I plant
Yeah, that's a great question. So the question was, if I planted 1,000 trees this year in a neighborhood, how long till it shows up in the tree equity score? That's a limitation of data, right? So even with LiDAR, oftentimes you're not going to be able to see if they're really young trees that come through. So it might be 5 years before you actually see the benefit. That's why I can't remember, someone was talking about being able to see loss and gain, but a sort of one of the next phases in our development is to be able to track where we're planting trees for tree equity score. So, you know, we've had lots of conversations with folks like Ian Hanno, the folks at Planet Geo, about sort of building in integrated tools that allow you to track. You see, you've identified a place in tree equity score where you want to plant. You host a planting and then you track that. We have simpler ways to do that for now, but we do really want to incorporate that and have those linked to the tree equity score. So you can see that I planted these, eventually we're going to improve the score by X amount.
On expanding the boundaries, or is there opportunity to do something where you can enter in, like specific boundaries? Like I work for an unincorporated county region, so my county is huge. We're only a small part of it, so we can't. The output of the county is not reflective of what is actually what we manage.
So can I have ask a follow-up question? Is your unincorporated part of the county, is it included in the urban
Yes.
area? It is. Okay. So the way we've set it up is that we have incorporated places, we have any census designated place, and then we have the unincorporated part of any county. And so there's going to be some parts of a county that show up as County X unincorporated in the tool. What that should show in the tool, and if it doesn't, let's talk afterwards, it should show only the urban parts of that county that are unincorporated. So it shouldn't be including the non-urban parts of the county. So that's an important distinction with true equity score. If a large portion of a county is urban, so let's say a county is 80% urban, only that 80% is included in tree equity score. So we don't include the other parts that are not considered urban. And we use the census definition of urban in order to calculate that.
We just did a tree canopy assessment, and we saw an increase in tree canopy, and a lot of the conversation was about how that increase was largely because we have trees that are continuing to grow. And I think there is a lost message when it comes to tree equity and canopy growth coming largely from tree plantings, but really it's also large trees provide large benefits, especially when you're thinking about aerial imagery. And so like looking at canopy changes, if this tool has future capacity to like look to see where that canopy has changed from existing canopy versus
So I think I'm following. So you're saying trees that have already been in the ground, but maybe we're at a less mature state, right? Yeah. So that's an interesting question that I think would be related to doing inventory, right? So that's related to that question about being able to track where you put trees in. If we had a way to link your tree inventory in your place to a tree equity score, I think that's, to be perfectly honest, it's probably a couple steps away for us to be able to get there, but I totally see the value of that. And if there's ways for you to use those in conjunction, that makes a lot of sense.
I work for a small, fast-growing suburb, essentially, and I see two potential problems with this tool for this type of community. So first, it's kind of going back to a question, what counts as plantable? And I'm just curious, it seems like planned density or planned floor area ratio is not factored in, it's more like existing. So if you're in a target that's actually unrealistic. And then my second thing was just, so I live in Portland, Oregon. You know, looking at my census block group, it's really a small geographic area because there's a lot of people. But the community I work in, it's such a large geographic area that it's like, okay, this random blob has a lower score than this one, but it's kind of harder to know where to target it. So it just seems like it would require more ground truthing, and ultimately for a city with less resources, it's small.
Yeah, so I'll work backwards. So I think your second question was generally about not getting to the level of detail that you need. We should talk about building a Tesla, which might get you a lot closer to that. But I think in this situation, I think you take out of something what you can get, right? So if you have those resources yourself already in that place, then maybe you don't need to use something like Tree Equity Score to do your planning. But I think at that neighborhood level, it might give you the first step. And that's a really important point about the National Explorer. This isn't like you see that there's a score of 70 in the National Explorer and then you get a shovel out, you know. Like you definitely have to do ground truthing. It's a starting place. That's why I sort of talk about it as like 10, 20,000 foot level before you can actually get. And Laura, I think, mentioned earlier, you know, make sure you're doing the ground truthing. So, you know, my hope is that with the National Explorer, it doesn't, you know, you're not just getting out there with a shovel, but it is helping you as a starting place. And then the second, now I just went off on a tangent. Now I need to remember exactly what that one was. Can you just summarize?
Planned building density.
Oh, yeah. So I think that's, you know, we don't incorporate planned. It's a national tool. That might be something if we were to build Tesla, for example, and we had that, if we had the comprehensive plan and be able to see where they're planning to build and what the expected density is over the next 10 years, I think that's something that we could incorporate into a tool like Tesla. It is about what's there today. But if tomorrow you've done that greenfield development and there's a higher density, your target, your goal for that neighborhood is likely to change. So nothing is set in stone in that regard. But, you know, it does say what your carrying capacity, so to speak, is now and the goals that you could have now. So.
Thanks so much to you and Mushtaaq. I'm just curious, you know, if you have any sense of the timing of when data like that might be available, and also
So I believe the CGIS data is publicly available now. However, I can't give you a timeline yet. Soon, we're trying to, we're running full speed ahead trying to wrap up this UK work. However, I do think I've heard from lots of folks that it would be valuable to incorporate the CGIS data into Tree Equity Score. So we're going to work to be able to do that.
Is there a way to make it so that you can load other data into it? We keep data on the green spaces and forest patches in Baltimore, and it would be good to compare it to your heat data easily or to show that to other folks.
So no, in fact, being able to do that is kind of my worst nightmare. But our data is available for folks to download in order to be able to get themselves. So I know that's not like the ideal space, but it's very difficult to really do that right.
When you say available, can you say more about what that means? Like, is it just pushing a button on the thing, or is it calling you guys?
That was such a great prompt. So within the tool, there's methods and data, and then there's a data download section. So you can download, we do downloads by state. So, and I believe it's shapefile, Mushtaaq. Do we also do CSV options?
GeoJSON as well.
Okay, so we have multiple different options for downloading at the state level. So if I were to go to Maryland, yeah, you can download shapefile, GeoJSON, or a CSV.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
show forest natural areas. Because we find our forest natural areas, forest patches and forest natural areas in Baltimore are distributed very differently than the street tree canopy. And it's really important to preserve those, especially for pulling, because they're better at pulling than street trees. So
Yeah, so we did have plans to try to collect this data nationally with partners at the Natural Areas Conservancy out of New York. They have some funding to be able to start that work, but not necessarily nationally. We see the value for sure for incorporating. In fact, I was just talking to someone earlier today about it. And there's the possibility that we might be able to incorporate this in a piecemeal way. So being able to incorporate forested natural areas where they're available, and then hopefully, as I was mentioning earlier, whether it's AI or some other thing, I think that we're in sort of a golden age of data, and I think we're going to have this nationally eventually, but figuring out ways to incorporate really good data that is available now. And we have precedent. So I don't think Mushtaaq showed it, but for example, we have redlining information for in tree equity score, and that data isn't available for everywhere, but we do incorporate it because it's such an important data set. So same thing with forest natural areas. Oh, we have a minute left. I guess we rolled right into the discussion. And if anyone has questions for any of our speakers as well, feel free. But I have a question.
I just had a question about arid climates versus temperate climates, because 20% canopy in a temperate climate isn't considered to be very good canopy coverage. Where in an arid climate where it's harder to grow trees and the soils have less nutrition, that 20% means a lot more and isn't kind of a lot better relative to maybe what other similar surrounding communities look like. So does that factor into the tree equity score?
Since I'm here. So yes, let me see if I can find it here.
The detailed methods.
In the detailed methods. Thank you, Mushtaaq. So depending on the region you're in, we identify forested. The baseline is 40%. For grassland and Mediterranean biomes, it's 20%, and for desert, it's 15%. Once we do the building adjustment, it'll look a little bit different. You can get down to this table here. We have a lot of data, and we've run some regressions to better understand how differences in density can impact your what you could really do or what is in a place. So we make those adjustments by the ecoregion and then adjust them by those. Yeah, so very much so, and we realize that that's, especially at the extremes, forested and desert climates or more arid climates, there's just not the possibility to do those things. Okay, thank you all so much. We'll be milling about. Come see us if you have more questions, and enjoy the rest of your conference.